My final guest of the afternoon ventured to Gombe, Tanzania at the age of 26 and began her now famous study of chimpanzees in the wild. In addition to being the founder of her nonprofit, the Jane Goodall Institute, she's a UN messenger of peace and a Dame Commander of the British Empire. Big welcome to Dr. Jane Goodall. Dr. Goodall, we're sitting here, and I should say you've been tireless on this same message for as long as I've heard you, which is most of my life. I heard you last personally at the World Economic Forum in Davos when you were speaking to these issues. And I guess my question is to you, what are your best bits of advice to the nonprofits, to the governments, to the policymakers, to the people listening to this today on how to make a better connection between the global environment and our natural environment and national security?
Well, I think the most important thing that we have to realize is that we are part of the natural world, not separated from it. And it's our disrespect of the environment, our disrespect of animals that led to the pandemic that is causing so much economic chaos around the world today. And it's our disrespect of the environment that has led to climate change. I mean, it doesn't make sense, does it, to think that we can have unlimited economic development on a planet with finite natural resources and on a planet where human populations and their livestock are growing. So right now, there are approximately 7.8 billion of us, and I cannot remember the number of our livestock on the planet. And already we're using up some of nature's natural resources faster than nature can replenish them. In 2050, it's estimated there will be closer to 10 billion of us. So if we carry on with business as usual, if we carry on exploiting the natural world in the way that we have been and still are doing, then that will lead to the extermination of all life on Earth, including our own, at least life as we know it. Some life will, of course, survive and recolonize, but as we are truly using up nature's resources in this ridiculous, I would almost say stupid way. And what makes it so absurd is that the biggest difference between us and our closest living relatives, the chimpanzees, who share 96.8% of our DNA with us, the biggest difference is the development of our intellect. So here we are, the most intellectual species to ever walk the planet, destroying our only home. And it's ridiculous. So that's our first message. We must learn to create a new relationship with the natural world, more respectful.
So with all respect for what I'm about to say, you have a couple of decades on me. And you've seen a lot. You've seen, when you went into the jungles, when you connected with chimpanzees, you also connected with a lot of other things. You know, the biodiversity you saw, I imagine, was more than I would if I were to go out there to ever see today. And I want people to hear about what you've seen get lost. You've lived longer than I have, but what have you seen get lost, and what alarm bells are going off for you right now?
Oh, well, I won't give a whole list of what I've seen being lost because it would be too depressing. But, you know, I've been locked down here in the UK. I'm speaking from the house where I grew up as a child. And when I was a young child, I would wake up very early in the spring and open the window and hear the dawn chorus of the birds. So many birds, this beautiful dawn chorus. Now, 3 or 4 birds. We've lost most of our birds. That's because most of the insects have gone. Many of the insects have gone because of the pesticides and herbicides that people use because they want their gardens to look nice and neat, backyards, you call them. And so when I first got to Africa, you could drive along roads almost anywhere and there'd be animals. You'd see wild animals. And on the Serengeti, I had an opportunity to be there before going to Gombe, and I was allowed to walk out with one other young girl in the evenings. We met lions, we met rhinos. They were there, they were everywhere. And when I got to Gombe, this little tiny national park in Tanzania, It was part of the great forest equatorial belt that stretched right across to the West African coast. And by 1990, looking down from a small plane, Gombe was a tiny little island of forest surrounded by bare hills, more people living there than the land could support, too poor to buy food from elsewhere. Gone with the buffaloes, gone with the leopards, and many other animals as well. And, traveling around the world as I did before the pandemic, I've stood in Greenland and seen the ice melting. I've met people who've had to leave their island homes because of the rising sea levels that make them uninhabitable. I've seen the results of the terrible, more frequent hurricanes and typhoons, the horrible after effects of the floods and the droughts, and of course the terrible wildfires. I've seen it with my own eyes.
You've been on a mission for a long time regarding chimpanzees, their natural habitat, preserving it. One of the questions we've been discussing today is whether or not, as we think about investment and policy and the kind of, I hate to put it, crassly, but the dollar side of things, whether or not we need to, create dollar values for these things so that they are not just whims or something we're attracted to or want to think about on a good day, but that they have weight in a world that's become very commercialized. I'd just be interested. I know it's a crass level, but I want to get to what works. What have you found works when it comes to the economic side of preservation?
Okay, well, that's a very good question. It's not crass at all. And the communities that I've been working with, not just in Tanzania, Jane Goodall Institute's now in 6 other African countries around chimpanzee habitat. And we are surrounded by people living in extremely dire situations, crippling poverty, lack of good health and education facilities, degradation of the land as communities grow and their livestock grow. And it struck me when I flew over this tiny little island of forest, surrounded by these bare hills in 1990, that if we don't help these people find ways of making a living without destroying the environment, we can't save chimpanzees, forests, or anything else. Because if you're really poor, you're going to destroy the last trees, fish the last fish, to either make money, to make food, because you have no alternative. If you're in an urban area and you're really poor, you've got to buy the cheapest junk food. You can't afford to say, did it harm the environment when it was made? And then coming back to Africa, ecotourism has been in some ways a boon because it brings in foreign exchange, which makes the central government happy. It provides lots of jobs with the hospitality industry and guides. And also, it's sort of helping the local people appreciate their wildlife. And we do need to put a value on it, crass though it may seem. I don't want to, but then I'm not in that situation of poverty. So, the sad thing about the pandemic is that there's been less money to pay the rangers, and a lot of the villagers have lost their jobs in the hospitality industry, and so poaching has gone up. So there's always problems to overcome. But yes, we do. For these poor people, we do need to put a monetary value or help them find a way of living without destroying the environment.
Dr. Goodall, I'm going to ask you an unfair question. That's part of my job. The unfair question I want to ask is, we have a new president and vice president coming into the United States, and I want Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to watch this segment. And I want to ask a tough question, because this is not a kumbaya situation. This is one where we hope people hear about the connection between natural security and national security and take action. What would be a couple of things that the Biden-Kamala Harris administration could do if you woke up and said, that is the right way forward? Or what could they do and say, that is absolutely the wrong way forward? I know you don't mince words, and you're an equal critic. So what would be the right steps for this administration? What would be the wrong ones?
Well, the right steps are to follow through on the commitment that Joe Biden has made to rejoin, or well, I'm not sure that America left, but to enforce America's position in the Paris Agreement and to make climate change a really important part of the role that his administration plays. And that means protecting the natural world. It's going to be very tough because President Trump rolled back so many of the environmental protections that have been in place in America, some of them since Roosevelt. So he's got a tough job. But what he's saying, that climate change is going to be a priority, is good because, climate change, as it hits different parts of the United States, it is causing an enormous amount of hardship for people. But in addition to that, it's going to cost the administration huge amounts of money as the hurricanes get more frequent and worse, and the flooding and the wildfires. I mean, we've seen it happening, and it's not going to get better until some of these restrictions on protecting the environment are put back where they were before.
Well, Dr. Jane Goodall, founder of the Jane Goodall Institute, you've been a tireless advocate on these issues for years. And I'll say, I was in Davos, and I was actually traveling, I think, with then Vice President Biden when you were speaking at Davos that year. Leo DiCaprio was there and others. But, it's a spoiled crowd that goes to Davos. These are, people in their own mind that are masters of the universe, very wealthy, private planes. And I saw them walk out of your talk for the first time in their lives, probably introspective, saying maybe we needed to see things differently. I thought it would be impossible. So I know you have an impact, and I just want to thank you for all the things you've done on this topic.
Well, that's extremely nice of you to say that. And thank you very much. And I think the reason people listen is because they know I mean it, and I really try and walk the talk. And we do, I should, as a last word, say, education is tremendously important. And I hope the Biden administration will push for environmental education in all the schools, because that is absolutely key to our future.
Well, Dr. Jane Goodall, thank you so much. Be well, be safe, and come back.
Thank you. I certainly promise I will.
Well, that brings us to the end of our program today. That was a real bucket list interview for me. A big thank you to the National Security Campaign and to all of you attendees for joining us for this set of fantastic discussions today. If you missed any of these conversations, we're going to have the video up from the entire event on our website shortly. I'm Steve Clemons. Thanks again to our hosts and our sponsors. Be well.